In 15 days wedding can take over, then
মোহাইরানাদ মহারাজ আসছেন ওনারা দুটো প্রথমবারে সেভেন্থে নেই তাই না তারপরে ওই যেমন টেনিসিতে ওনারা একটা রিট্রিট হয় ওদের সেখান থেকে ফিরে আসবে ফিরে এসে 14, 15, 17, 18. So he's our most favorite person. You channel. Very, very fantastic. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. আমাদের এখানে সরিয়ে দিলে আমরা এই জায়গায় আরেকটা ঠিক আছে ফাঁকা ছিল
Swami, we have some new devotees today.
Very happy to hear we have new
Yeah,
devotees
and
here.
Mike is the one. Can you introduce yourself, Swami?
What's that?
You have come first time. Can you introduce yourself, Swami?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Mike.
Mike.
I saw your talk on From Doubt to Realization, and I really enjoyed that, and so I figured I would come out and see you in person.
You live here, this area?
Yes.
Okay.
About 40 minutes.
Oh, good. Welcome. Glad you came, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Antara and introduce yourself to Swami.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm Deepayan. And my
Deepayan.
wife, yeah, and my wife Antra.
What is your name?
Antra.
Antara. Okay. And you're also local
From Durham.
from Durham? Okay. Very nice.
From JSX, someone from Durham. Usually,
Yeah.
you know.
You ready? Start. Okay. Devalina, you want to start with you? Oh, you have to come up to the mic.
Maybe you should go sit on the chair. And
উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার তোরায় না ছুটে ভবের মুটে তোরায় না ছুটে ভবের মুটে ভাসিয়ে দে না মাথার ভার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার যার লেগেছে বোঝা তার হয়েছে সোজা বোঝা বুঝির বুঝকি ফেলে মারছে সে মজা ও তুই রইলি বসে বোঝার আসে ও তুই রইলি বসে বোঝার আসে করবি শেষে হাহাকার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার প্রেম সাগরে ভাসিয়ে দে নাগা যাবি ভেসে এমন দেশে যার পাশে নাই গা ওরে চন্দ্র সূর্য ধ্বংস হলেও ওরে চন্দ্র সূর্য ধ্বংস হলেও হয় না সেথায় অন্ধকার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার সেথায় সবই উল্টা ঢং সেথায় সবই উল্টা ঢং হেথায় কালো সেথায় সাদা বুঝবি কি হাই রং ও তোর কার্য কারণ সব কারণ ও তোর কার্য কারণ সব কারণ নাই তথায় তার অধিকার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার গুরুদাস কেঁদে বলে ভাই আর বিচারে কাজ নাই গুরুদাস কেঁদে বলে ভাই আর বিচারে কাজ নাই বোঝা বুঝি অনেক হলো সোজাই চলো ভাই রামকৃষ্ণ আমার প্রেমের পাথার রামকৃষ্ণ আমার প্রেমের পাথার ডুবলে হবি ভব পার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার তোরাই না ছুটে ভবের মুটে তোরাই না ছুটে ভবের মুটে ভাসিয়ে দে না মাথার ভার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার উথলেছে প্রেম পারাবার
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We began this two-part series yesterday on the ABCs of meditation. I know some of you weren't here yesterday. I'm going to start out with a little bit of a review of what we did yesterday, and then we'll finish up. We did the A, B and a half yesterday. We'll do the C today. After that, I'm going to start out with a very interesting verse that will tie in very nicely with what we talked about yesterday. Urupam rupa vivarjitasya bhavado dhyanena yat kalpitam stutya nirvachaniyata vachaniyata kakila guru durikritayan maya vyapitvam cha nirakridam bhagavado yat yata yatradina kshantavyam jagadisha tad vikalata dosha trayam matkritam. O Lord, in my meditation I have attributed form to Thee who art formless. O Thou teacher of the world, by my hymns I have, as it were, contradicted the fact that Thou art indescribable. By going on pilgrimage I have, as it were, denied Thy omnipresence. O Lord of the universe, please forgive me for these three sins committed by me. Now, this is all tongue-in-cheek. These aren't sins, of course. But this just goes to what I was talking about yesterday. The fact that we have to use this Vidyamaya to get rid of Avidyamaya. So we're taking advantage of the fact that we can attribute form to the formless in order to reach the formless. It's not a sin at all, but this is why it's just kind of tongue-in-cheek. What it really means is that we understand that we're giving in to the weakness of the mind and the need of the mind to grasp something finite and something tangible in order to transcend all of that. And this is exactly what we were talking about yesterday. We started out with, anybody remember? The three first categories, A, B, C. Okay, Nama, Rupa, and Desha. We did Kala also. But we concentrated, we'll go more to the Kala. So the name and the form and the place. These were the three things that we spoke about. The fact that this ultimate reality is nameless gives us the opportunity to use any name that we like. If it were true that God has one name, then everyone else is wrong and I'm right if I use that name. If the ultimate reality is beyond name and form, then we have some options, and they're all legitimate. Now, when we say formless, I like to use the example of water. Is water formless?
Yes. It takes the form of where the
Yes.
vessel is.
So yes and no. It has no form of its own, but it never occurs without some form. Even if we take the ocean, it'll be flat on the surface, it'll have some waves, and the bottom will take the shape of the ocean bed. But the water itself has no form. So it takes the form. So this is the way we can conceive of this highest type of reality, that it has no form, but it takes the form of its container. Now, what is the container? Thakur gives the illustration. Hi, guys. Thakur gives the illustration of taking water from a pond, and some people will use a pitcher, and some will use a bucket, and some will use a sack, and all different things. So the water will take a different shape according to the shape of the container. What is that container? When we're talking about accessing this infinite absolute reality and
Our mind.
giving it some shape,
Our mind.
mind. Okay, so far 2 for 2. Davy has 2 correct answers. Yeah. So it's our mind, and we all have our own individual mind. This is the beauty of this whole Vedantic tradition and this idea of Ishtadevata, that we have this freedom based on the mind, and the mind is really the heart. Mind and heart, we really can't distinguish the two. So that means whatever feeling of love we have, whatever feeling of devotion, or devotion will be directed to a particular aspect of God, or personality of God, or manifestation of God, that we can utilize that, and that will help us with the particular name and the particular form, even with regard to whether male or female. If I say that God is male, God is father, then everybody who worships God as mother is wrong. If I say God is mother, then people who say, oh, God is father, they're wrong. But if I say that this ultimate reality is beyond, but can be worshipped either way, then everybody's right. So then it's a question of what appeals to us. Do I like to think of God as a father figure? That'll be a little bit more orderly and a little bit of this justice idea. And do I like to think of God as loving and kind and sweet? That'll be a little more the mother idea. So it depends on the nature of the individual, how they like to conceive of God. So this is why when we say Rupam, Rupa, Vivardita, so free from all form, and yet we worship God with form. And these are the 2 elements that we have in the mantra. That we have the Ishtadevata, so the mantra will include a particular name of God, and that will indicate a particular form. Now there can be mantras that will indicate the formless, but I mentioned yesterday that I'm really confining myself to the tradition of meditation that we have in our Vedantic tradition. There are many other traditions that will give, well, I mean, we can have a Soham, 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 is a Hamsa mantra, that I am that ultimate reality. There's no form, and there's no real name. There's no form or real name, but for our purposes, generally as we receive through initiation the mantra, it will contain this mantra, the name of the Ishtadevata. That means the form of God that we choose to worship, that appeals to us, and that will also have a particular form. So we utilize these 2 things, that we have something to repeat. And we've already seen that this repetition of the name of God, Japa, this repetition is something that everybody can do. It's a very easy thing to do. It can be done out loud. Some traditions, it'll be done loudly with kirtan and singing and dancing. And some traditions, it can be done out loud, but individually, we have different types of japa. The one where we actually utter it, there's an in-between where we simply move the lips. So no one will, if you're a lip reader, you'll know what we're saying, but otherwise you won't know, because there won't be any sound. And then what the interior, which is considered to be the highest form, is completely silent. And it is repeated internally that way. And this involves trying to picture the image. So repeating something internally is very easy. We can all do that. But this trying to visualize, picture the image, this is something that we have to work very hard to do. That each moment we have to try to recreate that image within the mind. And sometimes it'll be very hazy, sometimes we can go from hands to feet to face and try to see the whole thing. This is one of the challenges that most people face in meditation. The biggest question, most common question that we get in meditation is, why can't I visualize the image of the form of God that I want to meditate upon? Why is it so hard? And the answer is that it has to do with the nature of the mind and with the nature of this so-called visualizing and internal, this internal eye that we use, that we think it should be as easy as projecting an image on the canvas and just looking at that image. But the mind doesn't work that way. We all understand that. So we very often rely on this mantra, repetition of this mantra. And we can find any mantra. We can go to books, we can go on the internet, we can go to YouTube, all of these things. Nowadays everything is available. But I want to especially stress this. Receiving the mantra in a particular lineage from a very qualified guru gives that mantra a certain type of power. And we also have a certain type of commitment, and we feel a connection with that tradition. So it's extremely helpful in spiritual life to receive initiation directly from one of the gurus of the tradition. In our order, all of the gurus, everything gets traced back to the power of Sri Ramakrishna himself. And you're very fortunate here that Swami Sarvadevanandaji comes a couple of times a year, usually, and once a year at least, and whenever he comes, he'll give initiation to anyone who is interested. This is really the beginning of serious spiritual life, taking initiation. Thakur gives one nice example. If we picture, say there's some buried treasure in the bottom of it's in the bottom of the ocean. And we think that we can dive down and find that. We can go anywhere. We take a boat out to the middle of the ocean and we keep diving down. And we think, is it possible to find it that way? Yes. Yeah.
Take longer.
Yes. It's possible, but what are the odds? Huh? They're not very great. The ocean's a big place. Huh? Not very great. Now, suppose that there's a chain connected to that, and that chain goes all the way out of the water, it comes all the way on land, and we can go to somebody, he can say, I can give you that chain. I won't be able to tell you how many links it is, how long that chain is, but if you go link by link by link by link, there'll come a point where you'll have to dive under the water and go link by link. There's no question that you'll get that treasure. This is initiation. This is what we receive when we receive the mantra from a qualified guru in part of a parampara of this tradition that gets traced back in our tradition directly back to Sri Ramakrishna. not that it'll be the same mantra, but that spiritual power goes directly back. So, otherwise we can, in many other traditions, it's not so important. Many of the Vaishnava traditions, especially with this kirtan, everybody knows. You don't have to have any special type of initiation. They may also have initiation, but anyone can do it. In our tradition, we emphasize this idea of sacred nature of receiving the mantra and how helpful it is in our spiritual life. Otherwise, everything I have to say, it'll be relevant to everybody, whoever tries this type of meditation. But there's special value. I wanted to emphasize that today. I didn't speak about it yesterday. There's a special value to receiving the mantra through some type of formal initiation. Okay. So we see in this verse that God is all-pervading beyond time and space, the no name and no form, but we attribute all of these things. So yesterday we spoke mostly about this nama, rupa, and desha. What do we mean by place? This desha, now we can say that divine self, pure consciousness, does it dwell in any particular place?
In the heart.
In the heart, but can we confine it to the heart? Now, if we remember the illustration, Thakur gives the example of the onion. Or if we just take the Panchakosha doctrine, and we think that we'll get to the real nature of the self when we peel away all of the outer coverings. And when we get to the inside, we find that only infinite space, which pervades the whole onion and pervades the whole world. So from that point of view, we can say that the self is not confined to any particular place. But the different coverings allow the manifestation of consciousness in different ways. So there's a special manifestation of consciousness in the human heart. And I want to emphasize again, heart and mind are not two separate things. We use the term heart when we're thinking of emotions, and we use the term mind when we think of intellectual things. But in the Vedantic tradition, everything is in the heart center. We don't find any concept of intelligence will be inside the head and feelings will be inside the heart. This is more of a modern type of idea, really. In Sanskrit, this term manas, or even chitta, can be translated either way, heart or mind. There's not such a big distinction.
You say the heart is the seat of the mind.
The heart is the seat of the mind, and it's the seat of emotions, both. Well, this is that idea. I remember one time I had a friend that his brother's name was Suman, yeah. And I said something to him. He says, "Oh, he's very intelligent." He said, "Good-hearted." I said, "Oh, okay, now I understand that." Yeah, this mana, that those who have that understanding will know that this can mean the heart also. So I like that idea to think of Sumana for a woman as kind-hearted, good-hearted, not just having a good mind. So this is a little bit of a false distinction. So we can, with the desha, where do we want to meditate, that there's something special about the heart center, because it's the center of our existence. This is our center, the feeling of identity, and the seat of emotions. We were talking about this earlier today also, that whenever we have some special emotion, whether it's fear or anxiety or love, anything, that it'll manifest a little bit with the beating of the heart and with the breathing, with the lungs. Yeah? So if we get a little excited, we find that our breath, this is one of the reasons why we do pranayama, because if the mind is disturbed and the breath becomes rapid, then we can reverse the process. If we make the breath calm, then the mind will become calm. So they work hand in hand, both ways. So these were the three things that we talked about mostly yesterday, that we take advantage of the name and a particular form. Now, the form that we utilize in meditation can be something that it's almost purely imagination. Almost purely imagination. Say, I want to worship God as the Divine Mother. I can just have some image in my mind as Mother. Or it can be something more specific. We have so many different aspects of the Divine Mother. If we like that type of meditation, different arms, holding different weapons, different things, mantras, all of that, we can do that. Still, it'll be mostly kind of our imagination. But we have this concept of the avatar. This avatar, some special manifestation of God in human form. We don't have to believe that God himself will leave heaven and come down and take human form. Well, there are many different ways of understanding this avatar. But it'll be some special manifestation. Even if we don't believe special manifestation, the ordinary human being who manifests specially this type of divinity. Swami Swaranandaji, he used to have very simple ways of explaining things. He said you have two options. You think God becomes man or man becomes God. Very simple thing. God becomes man or man becomes God. So we don't have to take this idea that God descends. This is a Puranic idea, and Gita, a very standard idea of the avatar, that he descends. But many traditions will say that, yeah, we have an ordinary human being, not ordinary of course, but someone who has that highest realization. So no Brahman becomes a Brahman. Any of these great souls, even in Raja Yoga, any great soul can be an object of meditation. So we have this idea of the avatar that very often will get the name and the form of the avatar. That will be part of our worship. So in our tradition, of course, we look upon Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. And I don't make any distinction. I don't make any distinction. Very often you'll hear us just talking about Sri Ramakrishna. So to me, whenever I mention him, I mean Holy Mother also. Two sides of the same coin. They didn't come separately, they can't come separately. He himself knew it. He himself told her, whatever I did, you will have to do far more than what I did. So the same divinity manifested in both of them. We don't find any other example of this so-called avatar, and where the Shakti aspect, where the female part had such an important role to play. We don't find that in any other example that we have. So this worship of God and meditation on God as the avatar has some very special advantages. For one thing, it is the historical avatar. We have avatars that are semi-historical, Rama and Krishna. That there'll be many tales and legends and things. We don't know exactly. We don't even have to believe that these things actually happen the way that we read. We know that this literature has come up and the beautiful traditions and everything. Doesn't matter. We don't care so much. Swamiji himself said one time, whether Krishna lived or didn't live, it doesn't make any difference. We have that shining example and illustration. But the historical avatars, and we can go back to Buddha and Christ and everything, and of course Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. The great advantage that we have is, look, we have their photographs even. So it's not just trying to imagine. But we know what they looked like. And see, we read in Gita the words of Sri Krishna. Now, do we really think that he stood in that battlefield and spoke these words in perfect Sanskrit meter and everything? This is some recreation of a scene that probably took place and got changed and everything, and somebody created this beautiful hymn, which we call Bhagavad Gita and everything. But we have the words of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother so faithfully recorded that we really don't question that. So we know that this is not just our imagination. Now, of course, in meditation, we still have to use our imagination. This imagination doesn't mean something's unreal. This means that we're using that power to project something. And we're projecting something, even if we remember an incident that took place in the past, we're using that power of imagination. We're remembering a dear friend of ours. We're imagining something. It shouldn't conjure up the image that this is something false. This is just one faculty of mind that we have that enables us to bring something to the present which isn't there on its own. So Sri Ramakrishna, he emphasized what he called this Nara Leela. There was a particular incident that took place. We all know that time when he fell down and broke his arm. And he himself explains that he was walking outside along this kind of walkway, little railing and everything, and mind suddenly got immersed in this idea of Narayana, and from our Jagannath Puri. And there's some tradition that is the people want to embrace Jagannath, and he's in this bhava. He's in this state where he's not aware of anything, and he said he went to embrace this living image for him, and fell down and broke his arm. And he said afterwards, he felt as if the Divine Mother was giving him a message that now you've already seen God in bhava. That means in some divine ecstatic state where we don't see anything around us. That state is not available to most of us. This is something that is for these very great souls or great mystics or something, that their mind can rise to a different level where they're unaware of anything around them, but they're dwelling in some divine realm. So he said, as she were telling me that you've had that experience enough. Now, see God dwelling in human beings. This is Nara Leela. So we have two ideas. Nara Leela has two different meanings. For Swamiji, it meant I see God dwelling in each and every individual. And highest worship of God is service of this living God dwelling in all beings. The other meaning of Nara Leela is the divine incarnation. So if we worship God in human form, now this goes back to these three sins. How can I say that God is a human being? The Brahmos, they objected to all of these things. How can that infinite absolute reality manifest in this single human form? Or they would say that God dwells equally within all beings, why you call one the avatar and not the others? And Sri Ramakrishna would explain that yes, God dwells equally within all beings, but the Shakti is different. So within every wave, it's still 100% water. Every wave is 100% water, but there'll be some huge tidal waves. There'll be some huge tsunami. And seeing that, we understand the power of the ocean. This is that avatar. What Thakur says, like that hole in the wall, looking through which we see the infinite meadow beyond. There's our access to that. So this brings us to another aspect of meditation, which we call Lila Dhyana. And one advantage to this is that when we try to focus on one single unmoving image. So suppose we're meditating on Sri Ramakrishna, and the whole time we're trying to picture him sitting exactly like he's sitting. We consider this to be the meditation pose. There are many different photographs of Sri Ramakrishna, but very often it is recommended that we try to picture Sri Ramakrishna sitting like this. So we have no option. We can't picture him raising his arms and sitting and dancing, all of that. This is the way we're trying to do it. But then we're told that, no, why restricted? Why think that we're meditating on a picture? feel that we're meditating on that living presence of Sri Ramakrishna, as if he's really living there, dwelling within. Now, we talked yesterday about how do we imagine ourselves face to face. Well, we ourselves have to enter into that cave of the heart. Or, if we like this Lila Dhyana, we picture Sri Ramakrishna in his room in Dakshineswar. So, how do we begin our meditation? We walk into the room. We walk into the room, we bow down before him, we sit down in front of him. He can look at us. We should picture him with that divine smile on his face. And we have so many examples of, we read about it. He would go in, he would bow down before Sri Ramakrishna. Thakur would ask him different questions. So now we're using the imagination. And the advantage is that we don't have to restrict ourselves to a single point. We have this idea, this ekagrata in meditation, that we're trying to make the mind one-pointed. Now, we have a very nice example of this one-pointedness that Sri Ramakrishna talks about. These are archery contests. Thank you. That sometimes they'll let loose some birds, and the archers, they'll have to try to shoot the bird. And Arjuna was the best. He was considered the best of all the archers. So they were asking him that he's ready to do it. He said, "What do you see? Do you see all of the people standing around?" He said, "No." "Then do you see all of the trees and everything in the sky?" "No." "Do you see the bird flying?" He said, "No." They said, "What do you see?" He said, "I see the eye of the bird." So that was that degree of concentration, one-pointedness that he had. Don't try to picture somebody shooting a bird in the eye. It's not a nice image, but just that type of concentration. Now, our problem is, if we're watching the whole scene, okay, Ushavan, give my best to Umesh Bhai. Yeah. If we're seeing the whole scene, then we can look at one bird, we can look at another bird, we can see the trees, we'll stay within that whole scene. But if we're only looking at the eye, and we lose track of that, then we lose everything. So this is what happens in meditation when we have just one very fixed thing. We find that as soon as I lose that image, I'm trying to picture Sri Ramakrishna, as soon as I lose it, anything else can come in. And I find the mind is gone, it's wandering away some other place. So this is taking that concept of ekagrata, one-pointedness, and instead of a single point, it's giving us a circle. We have this term, gochara, and it's a very interesting term. This means a cow, and charati, it means to wander around. So we have this image that if you have a cow and you have a post and you hammer that into the ground and there's a rope and the cow is tethered to that rope. Say if the rope is 5 feet long, then what's the area that the cow can roam around in? Any mathematicians here? Any kids? Come on. So I've given you a 5-foot radius. Then, so what's the diameter? 5-foot radius, diameter? 10 feet. And then we have to multiply by pi or something, or 2
2 pi the circle, pi r squared is the
pi r squared.
Yeah.
All right. It should be pi is round, but we say pi r squared. Pi is round, right? Piece of pie. So this gives the mind some roaming area to move around in, so that it's not as one-pointed, but it stays within that. The cow can't go beyond that area. It's tethered, but it has a lot of room to graze. If we make it a very small area, what will happen? The cow will pull it out. It'll be hungry, it'll want some other grass there. It'll pull it out and be outside of that circle. So this is what we're doing with this Lila Dhyana, that we're allowing the mind to stay within this certain area. And we're giving the mind something very tasty, just like the cow likes that fresh grass. So now we really get to use the imagination, that we can picture Sri Ramakrishna sitting on his bed. I like this idea, this sitting on the lotus is hard for me to imagine. I like to think that he's sitting on this small cot next to the big cot. This is where we find it mostly. And we can feel that when we're sitting there in front of Sri Ramakrishna, that we're in the same room with Narendra, Rakal, Baburam, Yogin, all of the other direct disciples, householder disciples can be there, that Emmett will be there, of course, and Balaram and Girish and all of the others. And we can, whatever we want to think, Thakur will ask Narendra Swamiji to sing a song. And then Thakur will get up and he'll start dancing. All the devotees will be around him in a circle, dancing around him. So we can give free rein to the imagination. If we want to go outside of his room, we can take him outside of his room. We can go to the Panchavati with him. We can go to the under the bell tree where he used to do his tantric sadhana. Then we can go to the Nahabat and we can spend some time with Holy Mother. She can be there meditating. She can be cooking for Sri Rama. So there's no limit to, this is the point, there's no limit to the use of the imagination. And it's all within that same circle. And it's increasing our devotion. And it's eliminating everything else. At the end of that type of meditation, we may open our eyes and say, oh, so this is where I am. Huh? I felt that I was in Dakshineshwar for that half hour, or however long we meditate. We can really get immersed in that. And that feeling of love and devotion comes. And the feeling that this Ishta Devata is real grows. I mentioned yesterday, to me this is a very important point, that meditation is not a mental process. We want to really feel that divine presence within. However we understand Sri Krishna, Sri Rama, however we understand it, the Divine Mother, that's real. That's the real source of our existence, of our consciousness. That's the real self within. And we ourselves are participating in this. That it's not just the mind, that we as a small wave are entering into that big ocean and participating in that. So this joy comes, this feeling that it's real, this carryover effect. This is another very important thing, that we do this type of meditation, whole day we can feel that, what a wonderful experience, that I got to sit with all the direct disciples in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, that what a wonderful thing it was. Now, Thakur says another very, very nice thing. There was a conversation he had with Keshav Chandra Sen. We know Keshav was the head of the Brahmo Samaj. You all know what the Brahmo Samaj was. They were a group that incorporated a lot of Western ideas into Hinduism and eliminated a lot of Hindu ideas, so that they didn't like any type of image worship. They didn't care too much for this idea of the avatar. They didn't care too much for the idea of guru. But they liked this idea of Brahman, infinite absolute reality, but as a type of father figure, something like that. So all of these ideas of Radha Krishna and this divine play, all of that, they didn't care for that too much. So Sri Ramakrishna said to Keshav one day, he said, I know you don't like this Radha Krishna business. That Radha, all day long she's pining to go out and see Sri Krishna, and then they dance together in full moon and he's playing his flute. I know you don't like all of that. But try to appreciate this longing that Radha had to unite with Krishna. So this is that Vakulata. This is that aspect of spiritual life, the longing for union with God. Look at it as just purely symbolic. You don't have to accept it, this is or anything real or anything, but look at the symbolism behind that. So in this Vaishnava tradition, I appreciate very much some of the ideas of this tradition, how they incorporate this in Lila Dhyana. That all day long they'll be thinking of this divine play of Krishna as a baby or as a young boy or something like that. And this Radha Krishna episode, it has these two very important elements. One is called Viraha Bhava. Viraha Bhava means this feeling of separation from God and longing to unite with God. And it's Milana Bhava. When she finally gets to be with Sri Krishna, this is that feeling of union with God. And we can also utilize this. We also don't have to think in terms of Radha and Krishna, but we can feel that when we sit for meditation, that we are entering Thakur's room and we're sitting with him. That's that Milana Bhava. And as soon as we finish our meditation, we have to say goodbye. That all day long we'll be remembering that morning and looking forward to when we can go back, Viraha Bhava, with great longing, Vyakulata. And this way our meditation gives us the feeling of actual union. We really feel, now I'm in the presence of the divine reality that I'm worshipping in the form of Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother. I had that feeling of union, and as soon as my meditation is over, not that everything is gone, it's there, but I have to say goodbye a little bit, do my chores. I have to, like I have to go to school, I have to teach and everything. But they all said that the second that we left the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, that all we could think about was, when can I go back? Now, what does this mean? This means that we can't wait to do our meditation and our japa again. That longing to be in that presence. And when we're not in that presence, this viraha bhava, this feeling of separation, in the Vaishnava tradition is considered more important than this milana bhava. It's very interesting. This longing for union is considered greater than union. There's a Bengali expression that says, "Pawa teke chawa bhav." Is that it? That wanting something is greater than getting something. So they put great emphasis. Huh? Did I get it right?
Yes.
You've heard that?
Power take a shower, brother.
Yeah. So that type of idea. So we can bring this into our meditation. That when we're practicing meditation, we feel that it's not just, I'm not just trying to imagine something, that I'm in actual presence. And then we find something happens, that we find that the mind is dwelling in that divine presence throughout the day. Now, this is another thing that I mentioned yesterday. There's one verse from chapter 12, I like this verse very much. This, Mayeva mana adhasva, Maya, Mayeva, Buddhim Niveshaya. So he says, fix your mind on me, keep your intellect in me. Nivesishyasi Mayeva, and you'll live in me. From this moment on, you'll live with me, there's no doubt about that. So we find that we're living in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, when we can get the mind fully immersed at the time of meditation in that bhava, in that feeling. So we find that part of the mind is always dwelling in that distant realm, and that this play of Sri Ramakrishna, this play is continually going on. This is another nice Vaishnava idea, this idea of Nitya Vrindavan, that play that Sri Krishna undertook at that time is going on eternally. And I have that feeling that Thakur is still there in his room somehow, if we could only get access to it, and we get access to it in our meditation. So there was a book that was written many years ago by someone named Ramdas. He was a professor at Harvard University with Timothy O'Leary at the time of all these experiments with LSD and other things like that. He became Baba Ramdas. Yeah, and he wrote a book called Be Here Now. It was very, very popular when I was in college, and it was sometime in the late 60s, I think. Be Here Now, which is a very nice idea. This is for the Gyani. A very nice idea. We're always trying to live in the present. We're always trying to be focused. This is that idea, vipassana idea, mindfulness and everything. But for the bhakta, for the real devotee, this idea is live in the past, be there then. So I replace this be here now with be there then. So be there, let the mind dwell on that lila that took place then, which is still going on. And then let the mind live in the past. We say don't live in the past, right? Don't live in the past. The devotee wants to live in the past. Let part of the mind be ever dwelling there. Now, how do we do this? I'll tell you the best way to do it, and I know this by experience. The more we read this Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the more the mind, yes, will dwell. It'll get soaked in that. When I first really got seriously involved in our Vedantic tradition, and when I first started reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, I would read it so much. I just had the small version, the abridged version. Every few weeks I'd have to start over again. I would read for over an hour and a half every night. I just fell in love with it. So then of course I had to get the big version. And then ultimately I said I have to learn Bengali. I want to know what this sounds like in the original. So I learned Bengali. And I found that when I did so much of reading of it, that when I would sit for meditation, that everything would be transformed. I would literally feel that my room had turned into his room. I was living in some cheap little apartment in West Philadelphia. And yet, I felt that I was in Dakshineshwar. You hear the sound of the cars, it sounded like the breeze going through the trees in Dakshineshwar. So this can be done. And it is all a question of how much we immerse the mind in this idea and how willing we are to do it. One of the ideas of time that I wanted to talk about is how much time do we give to meditation and spiritual practice? As much as we can and as much as we want to, without forcing it. We have to know our limits. If for our meditation, if we're forcing it, then we'll find some aversion will come, and we'll find that we don't want to do it anymore. So this is that old trick of the Veena, that we don't want to make it the strings too loose, it won't play, and we don't want to make it so tight that it snaps. But we want to. It's really a sign of our devotion and time availability, of course. How much time we spend in meditation and spiritual practice and everything. So if we like this idea of Lila Dhyana, in this example, with the Vaishnavas they do the same thing with the Bhagavata. Day and night they'll be reading Bhagavata. And all the incidents in the life of Gopala and Govinda every day with the temple and all of that, so the mind is immersed in something like that. We have this Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and fantastic. I don't know another book that can compare with that. Now, there's a companion idea to this, and that second idea is pilgrimage. If we want to know, if we want to feel what it's like to be in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, then we go there and we sit in his room. If we don't do that, then it's strictly imagination. If we get that blessed opportunity to actually go and sit in Sri Ramakrishna's room, and we know what it feels like to be there, then we recreate that in our own minds. So this idea of visiting these holy places, we have our Char Dham. Anybody know Char Dham? What is Char Dham?
Jagannath Puri, Rameshwaram, Dwarka and Badrinath.
Okay. How about Dakshineshwar, Bellermat, Kamarpukur, Janamat? See, Swami Paramesanandaji, he wrote a series of poems and songs that came out. He wrote songs about all of these places, and he called it Chardham. So different traditions will have different holy places. But you're right, of course. But this is also that idea. So going on pilgrimage to these places, and this is something, especially Dakshineshwar, the M. Whenever anybody went to M, and was the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, whenever anybody went to him, he would say, "Have you been to Dakshineshwar?" And when he was younger, if they hadn't been, he'd say, "I'll go with you, I'll take you there." So when he was older and he couldn't go, he would send them there. And he would say, "Come back and report to me. Tell me what you saw." And he said, "Don't go there as a tourist. Don't go there, just with eyes closed. Look at every corner of the room. Remember what took place in every part of that room." We know exactly where Sri Ramakrishna sat with the Holy Mother during the Shodashi Puja. We know the direction that he faced, the direction that she faced. We know right near that huge container of Ganga Jal that it used to be. We know these things. We know that Thakur took out to the northern veranda, and when he touched, we know these things. So he said, look at each place, remember what took place there. Then when you sit for meditation, these will come back into your mind. This is that Lila Dhyana. So it's not for everybody. Some people, they like to just get immersed in this unmoving ultimate reality. Other people, they love this type of idea. And one other thing that can result from this type of Lila Dhyana, this meditation, is that at some point we'll tell Sri Ramakrishna, "Okay, it's been wonderful seeing you sing and dance, now go sit down again." And sit down again and go into Samadhi. I just want to look at you in Samadhi. Because the mind has been running around, it's also tired, it's ready to sit and become quiet. One of the elements of time, we were talking about how long we sit for meditation. This is also one aspect of time, is how long does it take for the mind to get quiet? Sometimes we see people sit for a long time in meditation. We think that, that they can go very deep into meditation. It may be the opposite. It may be it takes their mind a long time to get quiet, and that they're waiting for the mind to get quiet so that they can have a good meditation towards the end. And I have another theory that most of us, we get up before we've given the mind a chance to reach that point. That we think, the mind is just restless today. But if we were willing to wait and let the mind get a little bit tired, and at some point the mind will just feel the need to become quiet. And it won't be so much that we force the mind to do it, and sometimes it won't happen until the very end, and that'll be the beauty of meditation that morning. And if we get up before that, we've lost it. So sometimes we have to go through a little bit of a difficult period. We say the mind is restless and everything. It's always going to be restless. Some people, they can concentrate quickly in the beginning, and then at the end they get tired. Some people, it runs around the beginning, the end it gets quiet. So we have to analyze our own minds and give it enough time if we can. So these are these different aspects. We have the name that we repeat. We have the form that we can picture. We have the place within the heart. And within the heart, that place can also be where that divine Leela took place. We have the time. We're meditating now, here and now, the present, but the mind is in the past. Then we have all the elements we talked about, that's vyakulata. Then we have that longing for union, that feeling that we're in the presence of the divine. When we finish our meditation, it's not that we're no longer in the presence of the divine. His mind was equally on Sri Ramakrishna when he wasn't with him. But something special about that time, when we can devote ourselves fully to immerse ourselves in that feeling that now we're in the presence of the divine. And then meditation takes on a different aspect to it. It's not a technique. It's not a mental practice. then it's our chance to really feel that divinity within, feel ourselves in the presence of the divine, and at some point even forget ourselves. Remember Thakur's great statement, sometimes I look within, I see mother is there on one side, the child is there on the other side. Sometimes I see only mother is there. So this will be when the mind really gets immersed in this. We forget that we're even there. Already we've forgotten the physical body. It's not this physical body that's going there. We've already entered into the room in that subtle body somehow. And then at some point, it'll just be Brahman alone exists. It'll just be that divine presence. And we may even find that the image and personality, everything disappears, and we merge into something even higher. It's a very rare thing, and that happens through grace somehow. But short of that, we'll get tremendous joy out of this type of meditation. And there's no limit to it. I mentioned Swami Paramahansandaji. He loved this idea. You read his letters. There's a nice book, Go Forward, letters. Swami Paramahansandaji was Holy Mother's disciple. And there's so many beautiful letters about his advice to other people. Now you picture Godai, young Godai, playing with his friends in the grove, and how they want to come and rub his arms and play with them and everything. And let that be your meditation. And one fantastic letter, he says, today, you'll like this, I learned about a new game called table tennis. And he said, why not picture yourself playing table tennis with Sri Ramakrishna? He's on the other side, you're on this side, back and forth. And just to show that there's no limit to the use of the imagination. And it's true that we're attributing all of these things to that ultimate reality, which in Vedanta is beyond name and form, the pure awareness, pure consciousness, the ultimate reality. But this is our access to it through this devotional path, if we like this devotional type of meditation. And there'll be a sweetness to this type of meditation. So this brings in this last aspect. So now we have our Nama, Rupa, Desha, and Kala, and this Lila. That will be the last aspect. So, if anybody would like to ask any question or make any comment.
Swami, you said about Abhyasa.
Abhyasa. Yeah, Abhyasa, in general it means practice, Abhyasa Yoga. And it has a very particular application with meditation, where when the mind wanders, we pull it back. Now, there's a very famous verse in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asked Sri Krishna, what do we do with his mind? He says, it's more difficult to control than the wind itself, to try to control the wind. And he says that you can do it through Abhyasa Yoga, and he adds to that Vairagya. Now, if our only means of controlling the mind is mental strength, if his only willpower, that the mind wants to think of something else, it wants to think about, what I have to do for the day, and my cooking, and my cleaning, and my job, whatever it is, going to the movies at night, whatever it is. If the mind wants to think of that, and I say, no, you're not allowed, and I pull it back, it's going to keep fighting. It's very, very hard to, even we train the dog, we keep pulling it back. We think ultimately it's not going to try to run away. Then some rabbit comes or something and it'll try. So this Abhyasa, we try to do it, but what is preventing us from being successful is desires. It's external things, everything pulling the mind away. That's why we have this Vairagya. So that means that we have to somehow reach the point in life where we're not so attracted to these other things. We say, yes, this is, particular food I like, pizza I like very much, but why do I have to think about it all the time? I've had it before, I'll have it again, it's not a big deal. So we want to develop a little indifference to some of these things, this Vairagya. Now, Sri Ramakrishna says that the way the mind works is that we have to replace it with something. We can't just develop distaste for worldly things unless we develop a taste for something spiritual. So whenever he talks about Vairagya, he adds Anuraga. Almost invariably, when we look at his teachings, he'll always add that you have to have love for God if you want to overcome this love for the world. It's not just to simply say, no, I don't want to be attracted to the world. I'm afraid of it. It's going to give me attachments. It's going to pull my mind away. It's going to make me attached to the body, all of these things. We don't have that power of mind. We have to have something else that's sweeter, that's tastier, that pulls us more, is more attractive. Then we find the other thing is not so, this Goshpadavari. It is like the water in the hoof print. It is not such a big thing. It's not very important to us. There was a conversation that took place. I think there are different stories about this. I remember hearing it about Swami, I don't remember who I heard about it first. I think it was Virajanandaji. I think so. That somebody said to him, "Oh Maharaj, what tremendous dispassion, renunciation you have. You've given up the world for God." And he said, "No, that your renunciation is far greater than mine." So Deviji was a little surprised. "What do you mean, far greater?" And he says, "Look what you've given up. You've given up God, the greatest thing in the world, for a little bit of enjoyment. And what have I given up? A little mud puddle of the world, and I've gotten something so much greater. Your renunciation is far more than mine. You've given up such a great thing. I've given up a small thing." So if we can convince the mind that there's something that will be more enjoyable. Now what's the difficulty? The difficulty is that in the beginning, that Vishamila, it might not taste very good. It might taste like bitter medicine in the beginning. The mind isn't used to it. But at the end, then, like nectar, it tastes like nectar. This is the definition of sattvic happiness we find in Gita, that it's an acquired taste in the beginning. Now, some people are fortunate. Some people, they'll receive the mantra and they'll say, "Wow, this is the greatest thing," and they'll repeat. Other people will say, "Oh, repeating the name of God, it's such a great thing." And then the Guru will say, "You keep at it. Don't give it up." Then, ruchi, this taste comes. This name ruchi. This is one of the songs. What is this terrible disease that I have? I have no taste for the name of God. But this name ruchi comes. That there'll be some people that through this repetition of the mantra, that they don't want to do anything else. That they get such joy from it. That if you ask them to turn on television, want to do something like anything, they say, "No, I'm getting such joy." This is a name ruchi. So we need this anuraga to go along with vairagya in order to practice abhyasa. It's a very nice formula. Then we'll be able to bring the mind back when it wanders away, because we don't care so much for worldly things, and we have something tastier to give it. This anuraga. But I'm glad you asked, because I promised I would talk about abhyasa yesterday.
When I was in my 20s, I was in Calcutta, and every Sunday, not every Sunday, for a period, I used to go to Dakshineshwar Kalibari. And I was a very young fellow during that time. And I used to sit in Ramakrishna's bedroom. In the corner, his pillows. And I used to go, nothing feeling. But once, I got kind of different type of vibration. And I cannot explain to you what, I think it was a heart attack or what, I do not know. But something,
No, many happens to many people. I know with people, they go, the tears start coming.
Right.
They said, I would always sit right at the foot of his bed.
I used to
I
sit
had
in
a
one of
place
the
right,
corners.
that somehow I was, seemed to be
And
available.
I
when
had
he
the same feeling
went. Yeah,
after many years when I was in my 50s.
yeah.
And I, many times I have been invited to India to give talks and all those things. So I went to Lucknow. And then they took me around. They took me to Chota Imam. Chota Imam is a masjid.
Yes.
And when I went there, because I was a little special guest, the Imam, he showed me that I want to show you something. And he showed me a plank of wood. And he told me, what do you see there? Kind of finger, toe type impression. That is the place Hazrat Muhammad used to come. And during that time, as he was saying, I felt I was in the space.
No, that's true. That there's something about even physical objects, sacred objects and things. I remember the first time before the museum when they kept everything upstairs in the Bellarmine temple. That the first time I was given a tour of that, and I saw these two wooden asanas there. And the second I saw it, I knew this is where Thakur sat and Holy Mother sat for Shodasi Puja. And a thrill went through my body. It was just to think that, oh, it really happened. And this is really where they sat. That it just, it's not just imagination. You really get that feeling that this is so tangible that it really leaves an effect. So we may think, oh, we're spiritual people, everything is the mind and everything, but going to these places, having these experiences, makes it a big difference.
And I feel that if I go back to those places, and now I'm much older, I know some of the meditation thing,
Yeah.
doing the mantra, perhaps I'll be able to feel something.
Shamji,
Yes,
Here's some
yeah,
information.
this time, the last March,
yes.
month of March, we were in Kolkata, and we were fortunate to visit those 4 Dhamma that you say.
Right.
First day, one day, Dakshineshwar,
Ah,
middle of March, then
Yeah.
few days after Belur March,
yeah,
and then 1st April, Kamarpur and Gaya.
right.
So we had finished our trip.
So, no, very good. Okay, then Devalina, can we close with another song? Oh, yeah.
লহরী উঠিল মৃদুল করুণাবাই অরূপ সায়রে লীলা লহরী অতনু গঞ্জন কি মধুর বিভা বিকাশে নয়ন যে হ্যারে সে জন তনু প্রাণ মন চরণে অর্পণ করিতে চাই তোমারি আশায় কত যুগগত সংশয়ে যত আজি তিরোহিত যাচ্ছে আমার লহ উপহার যাচ্ছে আমার লহ উপহার সপিনু জীবন তব সেবায় অরূপ সায়রে লীলা লহরী উঠিল মৃদুল করুণাবাই অরূপ সায়রে লীলা লহরী
This sums up the whole talk. Yeah, there's an ocean, formless ocean of pure consciousness. This breeze of grace comes and raises a special wave of this divine play of Sri Ramakrishna. This was Swami Swaminanji's favorite song. He used to recite this every morning. He couldn't sing very well. He could recite. That's all.